Why do we tell this story and go to such lengths? Scripts distributed a couple of weeks ago. Participants practicing, working their way over difficult words, trying to make sure that they absorb not only the lines but the story itself. Giving time to be at a rehearsal just to make sure everything ran as smoothly as possible. Why don't we do the gospel that way every Sunday? What's so special about today? Why tell the story in this way? Why processing the palms at the beginning of the service? What are we doing? Playing? Faking it? Trying just to evoke something? Why? Because it's our story. This story is our story. And when I say our story, I don't mean it's our story in the sense that as Christians, this is our story, and so we tell it again at this beginning, this opening to Holy Week. No, I mean it's our story as human beings. I mean it's our story as God's children. I mean it's what we live. It's what we know. It's our experience. An archetype. An image or icon or pattern that repeats over and over again in our world, in our human experience. An archetype, like Adolf Hitler is the archetype for all evil. Like the Beatles are the archetype of a 60s rock band. Like any number of archetypes that you can think of in your own experience. An archetype. Our lives are an archetype upon which the Passion of Jesus is modeled. And then the Passion of Jesus, as you have just heard it expressed and shared, is an archetype of our lives in reflection. A picture of what life is like. I will never forget that Saturday night when I was a student in seminary and working the midnight to 8 a.m. shift at a local hospital on the south side of Chicago as the chaplain. At about 2 o'clock in the morning, a bridal party came into the emergency room. And shortly after them, the ambulance. While they were celebrating this new experience in their lives, the excitement of bride and groom together, the bride's father had a heart attack on the dance floor. He didn't survive. Celebration and devastation side by side. That bride would always remember that the day of her wedding was the day of her father's death. An archetype of our experience. We celebrate and we mourn. We rejoice and we feel empty. Life is good. Life is incredibly difficult. We are blessed. We feel forsaken. This is our story, this passion of Jesus. But my sisters and brothers, it's more than that. We tell this story at the beginning of our celebration of Holy Week, of this week that calls us to remember and absorb and be open to what God has in mind for us as God's family. We do not leave this story here. We do not leave this story at the closed tomb. But we do not tell the story all at once. So live in the story. Live the story. Know that it becomes, in this death of Jesus, the archetype of our future. And even as we immerse ourselves in the reality of that sadness and pain, and yes, most especially the depths, the unfathomable depths of God's love for us, in the midst of that, can I encourage you to raise your eyes and your hearts a bit to the horizon that awaits, to the surprise yet to come, that which God has planned for God's beloved children beyond our imagining. Because God knows, even at this end of the story continues.